It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
The ability that you have, number one, to communicate, and number two, to collaborate. This doesn't just go one way. This is a two-way conversation, and it takes the two of us to work it out.
And that's why it's a marriage or a partnership.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Okay, Kylie, are you ready for a doozy of a parenting question today?
A doozy.
This one is a doozy. It comes from a listener who has emailed us via podcasts.
Is doozy even a word?
Podcasts with an S at happyfamilies.com.au. You know it's a doozy. You know it's a word. Doozy. I'm going to Google it right now and tell you what the definition of doozy is. If you look up doozy on Google, it says something outstanding or unique of its kind. It's going to be a doozy of a black eye. It's going to be that's the example. Doozy of a black eye. I think Google could have come up with a better one than that. This is a doozy of a question. It comes from a listener who says, my husband and I are just totally different parents, and we are constantly disagreeing about everything and anything, mostly in relation to rules and discipline. I'm really stuck. I don't know how to make things consistent in our house when they are anything but. As an example, my husband, who works away from home a few days a week, came home and told my eldest, who was only 9, that he could go in the pool on his own. I thought at least the pool rules we agreed on, but apparently not. We have younger kids, so my rule has always been no kids in the pool area without an adult, and that's not negotiable, regardless of whether they can swim or not. He openly said, well, I think that's bull to me in front of my 4-year-old, which I was appalled at. And of course, the younger kids instantly started asking if they could go in the pool area as well. I'm not sure what I'm asking here, but is there a way forward when two parents just don't see eye to eye? Discipline is a big one. I don't believe in smacking. He does. We have 2 neurodivergent kids, and I feel as though his expectations are too high. I'm looking for some kind of guidance. This parent's in a hard place, Kylie. And it got me thinking, have you and I ever disagreed? I'm sorry. I couldn't keep a straight face when I asked the question. Not that I want to minimize what this mum is going through at all. But is it reasonable to say that if you're not disagreeing in your relationship, you're probably not in a relationship, or not in a healthy one at least?
We're not suggesting that contention is imperative for a relationship at all.
No.
But what we are suggesting is that we're two totally different people. We're going to have different opinions.
Right.
A lot of the time.
Yes.
And the idea that a relationship will run smoothly all the time is a fallacy.
Okay. So we've disagreed on, and I'm making a mental list right now. We have disagreed on
discipline.
Yeah, that was one of our big ones early on. And well, I don't know, and I'm going to call this pretty bluntly right now at the outset. The biggest concern that I have about this particular email is the way that this mum has described the interaction between her and her husband and the children. I'm feeling a level of disrespect, a level of contempt that's directed from the husband towards her. It feels like a level of selfish disregard, which does concern me. But if we set that aside for just a moment, it's normal for couples to disagree about pretty much everything. And other than that disregard, my sense is that I've been that dad. Maybe I've even been that disregarding of your opinion. I don't know. I don't have that level of self-awareness, nor the ability to reflect back on what it was like 10, 15, 20 years ago when our children were young, like this family. But the reality is we kind of get tunnel vision. We become fixated in the belief that the way we're seeing the world is the way the world actually is.
Well, and it's the only way to see the world.
And anyone who sees it differently must be blind or silly or mistaken in some way. Unfortunately, we are seeing in this email a level of disrespect associated with that, which I really struggle with now. But maybe that was me back then as well. Hopefully you can't remember me being like that.
No, I don't ever remember you talking to me like that. I think one of the central challenges, it actually puts your children in a really challenging position, because now they recognise that there isn't alignment, and they're going to go back and forth between you and actually create more challenges because they just want what they want.
True.
And they're going to do whatever they can to get it. One of the things I've loved about the relationship that you and I share is that there have been plenty of times that we've disagreed, but whenever our children have tried to conquer and divide, their number one complaint is they'll go and ask you, and what do you say?
What did Mum say? And it's not because I'm being lazy. It's because we won't have that disagreement in front of the kids. We'll have the disagreement behind closed doors. So we've disagreed
They come and ask me and I tell them to go and ask Dad.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right, because you don't want to make a decision. You're not actually worried about alignment. You just don't want to have to make a call on things. But what we're really trying to do here as a couple is when we disagree on things, like we used to disagree very much on discipline in the early days, very, very strong disagreement around that. Then when we got over that, we disagreed about things like how much homework the kids should be doing. I've got a strict no homework policy for our kids in primary school, unless it's reading. You've always said, don't rock the boat, just let them do their homework. They want to do it anyway. And over the time, we've worked that out bit by bit, mainly because I've been away traveling and teaching people how to have happy families. And so you've just got the kids to do their homework anyway. We've had a different view on NAPLAN. We've had a different view on how many extracurricular activities the kids should be doing. My view is let's give them every enrichment opportunity that we can, even if we can't afford it, and even if it means we're going to be broke for the entire time that we're raising our children, because I want them to learn those instruments and play those sports and have those enriching experiences. And you've had a more, can we simplify our lives approach? So we've had a lack of alignment on a variety of issues. When I read this email, my number one point outside of the lack of respect that's been shown to mum, at least in the way that she's reported the incident, my number one concern is, can we have these conversations without the children being present? Can we really understand one another and work things out?
So when I think about this situation, to me, this is actually less about parenting and this is actually more about alignment as a couple. The challenges that you and I have experienced over the years when it comes to being out of alignment in whatever area, it could be anything, it doesn't have to be about the children, it could be anything. It actually stems back to a foundational misalignment. It's not about one specific thing. So if we want to actually get on the same page as parents, then we actually have to take a step back to the root relationship, which is you and I.
Okay. So let's talk about that and then we'll discuss the respect issue because I think it has to be addressed, but we'll save that for the last. When it comes to obtaining alignment, it's critical at the outset that we actually know what we want. This is so important when it comes to your children and the pool, or when it comes to your children and discipline, or when it comes to your children and homework or extracurricular activities. Knowing what you want is the first step to creating alignment, because until you can identify and articulate what it is that you want, the other person, if they do know what they want, they'll always, I'm going to use the word win in inverted commas because it's not really a competition, but their view, because they know what they want, will become the prevailing view because they're able to articulate it. And the person who can clearly articulate and enunciate what they want will prevail. They will be the one who steer the ship because they know what they want. They know what direction they're heading in. So being really clear about what you want is critically important.
So you're talking about what you want as a family.
What you want as a family, but also what you want in terms of discipline, or what you want in terms of the children having access to the swimming pool, or what you want in terms of television and screens, and the list goes on. What do we want? Do we want to have children who do whatever they want with their screens whenever they want, or do we want to have select times that are really, truly reserved for time together as a family with screens off, like bedtime or like dinner time or like time in the car? So it's about knowing what you want and why you want it. If you can get what and why, that means that you're going to be far more effective in communicating that with your partner if any conflict comes up. You might resist and react. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? I'm not okay with that. But when they say why, you sort of stammer and stumble and say, I don't know. I don't want them to be able to do that. So knowing what is important, but my second key thing is you've got to be able to then know why. Because when you and I are having a conflict about what's going on with the children, we're trying to articulate to one another why the children should be doing all those extracurricular activities or a whole lot less extracurricular activities. The person who is able to make their argument well doesn't mean that they win, but they're going to be more persuasive in the eyes of the other one. If I can tell you that I want the children to be doing these extracurricular activities because it's enriching for them and it's good for their social situation, they may make more friends, it upskills them. And as they're adults, they'll have more of a sense of confidence and competence because of all the things that they've done. Also, the research shows that it's good for their brains. And it's
always about the research.
Right? So, but when we step into that conversation, that doesn't mean that I'm going to dominate or win. That's not it at all. But it helps you to I guess, see that there's a really strong rationale from where I'm coming from. It doesn't mean I'm right, but it means that I'm really clear on that. Your response to me might be, those things are all well and good, but our family is busy and this is taking an enormous toll on you because you've got to go and earn all the money to pay for all these extracurricular activities that we can't afford because we're spending X number of $100 because we have this many children and it's this much every week. And by slowing our family down, we get to enjoy one another more. And I'm running around all over the place and it costs a fortune to fill the car. And so then you're articulating your position. Not that we're trying to have a fight here, but it's about understanding the why.
No, and I've loved over the years as we've had these kinds of conversations, my initial response is just to shut down. You've got this big rationale, you know what you're talking about, and I literally just shut down. I give up.
Which is one of the problems with articulating and saying, well, you tell me what you think and I'll tell you what I think. That's psychologists will often say, let's just hear both sides of the story. But the person who is more articulate, the person who can make their argument stronger, kind of gives them an unfair advantage. Not everybody is going to be that strong on the way they explain their position.
But what I've loved is that when I have a tendency to do that, you've actually stopped me and said, no, I really want to understand. Why do you feel so strongly about this? Can you tell me? And so that's allowed me to then share what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. And sometimes it's worked that you've kind of gone, oh, I get it now. And we've gone my way. But there've been plenty of times where you've gone, I can see what you're saying now. I completely understand. But can you actually see from my point of view that the things that you're worried about are actually counted over here or whatever the scenario is? And I think that when you're in a relationship, the ability that you have, number one, to communicate and number two, to collaborate, this doesn't just go one way. This is a two-way conversation and it takes the two of us to work it out.
And that's why it's a marriage or a partnership. So my strong preference in a situation like this for this listener who has emailed us is to suggest that we use the 3 E's, but you can't do it in the moment because nobody thinks clearly when they're emotionally elevated.
Well, I guess that was the other thing I was going to bring up is just the fact that we're often trying to have these conversations when things are heated.
Yeah, not going to work. High emotions, low intelligence. So explore, explain, and empower. Let's say this was between you and I, and you were the one that said, just let them swim, and this is ridiculous. And I was the one saying, no, we've got rules. Like our 9-year-old can't swim because we're going to have these problems. And you said, oh, just don't be silly. They can do whatever they want. And you override me in front of the kids, and it all blows up. Later that afternoon, later that evening, maybe the next day, I'm going to say, I want to have a chat with you about what happened yesterday with that pool incident. Are you open to talking with me about it? And hopefully you'll say yes. If you say no, then I know that there are much deeper issues in the relationship. Okay, this becomes about disrespect. This becomes about power. This becomes about domination. It's a really unhealthy dynamic in the relationship if that's going on. But so long as you're willing to say, yeah, we probably should chat about it, then I'm going to say, what was going on with that yesterday? Because we've talked about this and you kind of just stomped all over all the rules we've made up and you stomped all over me and left me feeling really confused. Now, you'll note that I'm expecting that you will take ownership, but I'm keeping it gentle and light. And I'm saying, what was going on? I'm exploring, the 3 E's of effective discipline. I'm exploring what happened and how come. And it might be that you say, you know what? I'm so tired. I'm so stressed. The kids have been driving me up the wall. You've walked in and you're going to be the Disneyland dad, but I needed some space. And I also wanted to be with you. And that's why I just said that they could go. And all of a sudden, the whole situation makes sense. I know it's contextual rather than a blanket rule, a big problem that we've got. And I know that you had great intentions, but it was just poorly executed. And so just getting you to explain that to me as I explore with you, that's all I need. I can say, give me a hug. It's been so rough, hasn't it? Let's figure this out. What do we do next time so that we don't end up in this horrible situation? But there's the explore, explain, empower. Now, if I try to have this conversation and I get more of the disrespect that we saw in that email, then I think this is where we start to go, where is this self-focused response coming from? Where is this dynamic that is so dominance-oriented built upon? And I actually think, I want to say this really gently, I think that if we're in a situation where a partner in the relationship is not allowed to have a voice, that some serious questions about the relationship need to be asked and help needs to be gotten. How do we develop boundaries? How do we communicate through conflict? How do we figure this stuff out? Because if it's not going to be the pool, it's going to be screens, or it's going to be school, or it's going to be friends, or it's going to be, the list is endless. So as a couple, we've got to be able to work it out. The short version of this: explore, explain, and empower. Try to understand, where are they coming from? What happened there? That's not how we normally deal with things. And that's how you get on the same page. If there's an unwillingness, that would strike me as being a form of dominance. It would be an inappropriate relationship dynamic. It's not a safe dynamic, and it leads to, I think, selfishness. It's not what a good relationship is built on. And that's the kind of relationship where people really need help. And so hopefully our podcast listener who sent this email through can get that help. I know that there's probably a lot more that we can add, but our time is up. And in the podcast, we can't provide a fully comprehensive answer. So a quick restate. Ideally, have agreement, have alignment ahead of time. But if there is no alignment, then work it out behind closed doors. We don't want the kids to see us having a big blow up about what the rules are or are not.
It actually creates a level of insecurity in our children.
Yeah, it does.
They need predictability, and they need to know that there's stability in the relationship and in the rules.
Not that your children should never see you have any disagreement. Number one, that's impossible. But number two, it's good for them to see that you do have disagreement, but that you can work it out. The ability to say, we're disagreeing about this. Why don't we have a chat about it a little later and see if we can work it out when we're not both feeling a little bit emotional about it? If the kids can see you do that, you're now modeling really effective conflict resolution. And then you can go to the kids the next day and say, you know how that thing happened yesterday between the two of us around this issue? Well, we chatted about it last night, and this is what we've agreed on. So we're teaching the children that we can have disagreements, that we can work through them, and that we can find resolutions. And the best way to get those resolutions is to explore, explain, and empower. I just think there's so much power in saying to your partner, where are you on this? I feel as though we're not aligned at all, and I thought we were. Can you just fill in the blanks for me? What's happened? How come you've shifted? Just exploring and then explaining, so I'm still here and this is why. And then empowering. So where do you think we should go from here? How can we get alignment on this? I guess the last point that I would make, Kylie, is that nobody's ever going to be fully aligned with their husband, wife, spouse, partner. It's not going to happen. You and I still don't agree on everything. There's a lot that we'll have minor discrepancies and disagreements about. But we never let those things become bigger than our relationship.
I was having a conversation with our eldest daughter the other day. She's been away for the weekend with another couple, and they just fought the whole weekend.
The other couple fought?
The other couple,
right.
Yeah. And she kind of just looked at it and she was like, I have never experienced anything like this before. And one of the days she was talking to the guy, and he was just like, this is just like full on. She just said, you've just been fighting like the whole time. And he said, well, she always wants to have a fight. If she's going to fight, I'm going to fight back. And Chanel's response was, mate, there always needs to be a teddy bear in the relationship.
There needs to be a teddy bear.
And as
she didn't get that from me.
Well, as she talked about it, she said, Mum, she said, it really comes down to how you've been brought up, doesn't it? She said, because I think back on my childhood, and she said, I can't think of very many times where you and Dad were outwardly aggressive and angry with each other. She said, for sure you disagreed. She said, but I just watched how you and Dad dealt with things, and it was usually Dad, she acknowledged, it was usually Dad was the big teddy bear. He'd just come and give you a big hug and tell you how much he loved you, and that there was nothing that I could do that would change the way you felt about me. And I just thought, again, so often as a parent, you kind of sit there and you go, oh, we've had so many arguments and stuff. But what the kids have seen is how we've resolved it. It's not actually the argument that stands out to them. It's the way things end.
Well, now you've got my eyes leaking. Thank you for sharing that. I guess to wrap up, now that you've said that, I want this mum who sent us this email to really consider what's going on with her husband. Why is he responding the way that he is? And can she coax him into a more open conversation? Is he open to exploring, explaining, and empowering? Is he open to conversations where there's a collaboration? Because a great parenting relationship, whether you're co-parents or whether you're a couple, comes down to recognizing that this is a partnership. It only works if you work together. And the kids will thrive so much more if there is security in that relationship. We really hope that this has been a helpful conversation. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rullon from Bridge Media, with Craig Bruce as our executive producer. For more information about making your family happier, we would love for you to join us at happyfamilies.com.au or visit our Facebook page. Our Facebook page is Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families. Tomorrow, an important conversation on the Happy Families podcast with the Australian Federal Police about how much grooming is happening online and what we need to do to protect our kids. And then on Thursday, the Raising Resilient Kids Summit. If you haven't grabbed your tickets, time is running out. Less than 48 hours until the summit kicks off. We can't wait to see you in what will be one of the most important conversations you can ever have when it comes to raising resilient kids. We'll see you there.